All right, friends, we're back here on the workbench. We've got the 1973 Fender Princeton Reverb. We already did a part 1 of this series that was a bit ago, so I will include a link in the description. Long story short, this is a very unique amplifier in the fact that it's one of those weird ones from the 70s where it does not match any of the layouts or schematics from Fender. It's got some weird idiosyncrasies that just don't line up. So we actually had a Basement 50 before this that was the same way. 70s was a weird time for Fender. So, but otherwise, it's all original. So it's the way it came from Fender. And we've got a laundry list of tasks that the owner wants done to this. The owner provided all of the parts for it. So yeah, he's made the call as far as what he wants installed and where he wants it installed. And it's going to be a lot of kind of basic maintenance and as well as some mods. So I've overviewed all of that in part 1. So if you want to see all of that detail, go ahead and check that video out. But really the main thing I want to point out that has happened since part 1 is the plan for the filter cap here, the main filter cap. Now, these amplifiers use a can cap, and the modern replacement for those, the typical one is from CE Distribution, and they are just the reputation has gone down the drain pretty significantly. A lot of people have reported issues, them failing early, just not being reliable. So yeah, most people have steered away from those that I know. And there's a few different ways to get around that. People will install discrete caps, so you'll have 4 caps kind of pyramided here, or you'll install some kind of tag strip here. There's lots of ways to do it. The owner actually originally provided this can cap as a possible replacement. This is a JJ, which is a pretty good quality cap that would work. However, you'll notice the size is way off as far as the hole here. So it would require opening up the hole in this amplifier, and I just recommend it against that. I just think something this clean and vintage, I think we can find a solution that doesn't require modifying the chassis in any way. So with this out of the way, we talked about doing some discrete caps as an option, but we're adding in an adjustable bias pot, which will go right under this cap here, and there's just not a ton of room. So I did some research, talked to some people, and I was pointed towards this. So this is another can cap, a Hayseed Hamfest. They're made in the USA. It's rated pretty good, 105 Celsius there, and it's a quad of 20 microfarad, 500 volt caps. And yeah, this, according to my measurements, should be a drop-in replacement for the original cap here. So I think this will be the best solution. I've heard good things about this, so we're going to go ahead and give it a try. And yeah, and then that way we'll have plenty of room for the adjustable bias pot, and we don't have to worry about kind of some janky little thing here, but we can always, do that as a backup. So with all of that said, tonight, the plan is really, let's go ahead and swap out this volume pot that was broken and damaged, and then possibly get to the bypass caps here and fixing some of the resistors that are not correct per the schematic, kind of rectify those basic issues, and then I think from there we can go ahead and dive into the deeper stuff maybe tomorrow, including the can cap swap with the bigger iron, the bias circuit, and all the other fun stuff like checking for leakage. I'm sure it's going to have some. This board is very waxy like all of these 70s Fenders are. So yeah, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but let's go ahead and I think get started with the volume pot. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is just remove all the connections off the back of the volume pot here. It is always interesting to see the difference in quality of work in these Fenders comparing black face versus silver face. It's always such a stark difference that's immediately noticeable. All right, that was fairly painless. So let's go ahead and see if we can undo the pot here. It is very jacked up, as you guys saw in part 1. So hopefully it comes off fairly easily. And there you see it quite jacked up there. So let's go ahead and see if we can find a socket to fit that. All right, found our socket here. So it was a 14 mil, closest I had. And that was actually bigger than the one below it. So let's see what this one is. It's a 1/2 inch. That works perfect. All right, let's see the damage. Well, okay, let's see if I can get this to focus. So it's hard to know what happened here, but my guess was that it broke, obviously, and it looks like somebody tried to glue the brass back in there. So yeah, not great. We'll go ahead and save that, but this will go in the bin for the owner to do what he wants with. All right, let's grab the new pot. And here is our replacement. So it is this Alpha 1 Meg. Should be good. It does sound a little, let me see if I can get the mic to pick it up. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of Deoxit D5, which is kind of my go-to for cleaning pots and getting them to work a bit better and be smoother. So let's go ahead and do that now. There you go. New volume knob connected. So let's go ahead and solder it up. All right, we're ready to go ahead and try and solder this in. One thing I noticed is the holes here on the lugs are smaller than on the originals on this Alpha pot, which is not the end of the world, but it does mean we're going to have some difficulty here because this ground connection, which is connecting the brass plate to this lug, as well as the ground connection off of the shielded wire here, both have to go to this lug. And I'm not sure there's enough room to fit both. So we'll see. Let's give it a shot. I'm going to have to clean up the edges and get off some old solder and see if we can get everything a bit tighter. But yeah, so not exactly a super easy swap, but also it shouldn't be too difficult. I think I'm going to do is just cut off this end here. It's just kind of a mess and it's going to be hard to get undone. There's enough room. So we're just going to do that. And then we'll see if we can fit this through. I might add a dab of solder on the tip just to make sure it doesn't fall apart there. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the connections with the amp in this position so the camera could see. It was just too tight of a fit for this eyelet, or sorry, for this lug on the pot. I was able to get the shielded connection and the ground connection in the same lug, and it worked out okay. It just was a very tight fit, and I had to do it off camera. But either way, the volume pot is wired in, hooked up, good to go. So now we can move on. So now we've got all of these bypass caps to swap in. We've got mod 25 microfarad 50 volt caps that will be replacing all of these white Mallories you see everywhere. Now you can see just how gross and waxy this board is. Pretty typical for a 70s Fender. Not great. Now when we add the soldering iron to the eyelets here, it is going to melt the wax around it, superheat the area, and it should help purify and kind of limit the amount of leaky voltage we might see when we check for that later. We're not going to be, perfect here and remove every little bit of wax and everything across the board. That would be a massive task and just not going to happen. But we will make sure there is no leaky voltage when we're done. And, it's just kind of part of having a 70s Fender, to be honest. You get this lovely, disgusting, waxy board. Another point for the blackface. All right, let's go ahead and remove this first cap. And so you can see superheating that area, just kind of melted all the wax around it, which will give it this kind of pool effect when it dries. Which doesn't negatively affect anything. It's just kind of a visual cue. There you go. There's our first bypass cap removed. So with that first one removed, you can see how it kind of melted the wax around the eyelets, and the wax is still there. So we're going to kind of carve it out just around the eyelets, and we will be cleaning out the eyelets, removing all the solder and redoing it. And then you can see here is a comparison of the old cap, Mallory 25 microfarad, and then this is a modern 25 microfarad 50 volt mod cap. These have been great for me so far. I've used them in quite a number of amps, as have a lot of people I know. And yeah, they've been working well. So that will be swapping in there. But first, let's go ahead and clean up the areas around the eyelets. Pretty gross, to be honest. And we will vacuum up inside of this amplifier when we're done. So don't worry too much about all this little gunk everywhere because it will be cleaned out later. I must say it is nice working on Fenders again. Much less fragile than the Vox is. And I can go back to using this, which is convenient. Of course, the braid still has a lot of use. I just like to be able to get the bulk of it out first with the pump and then switch to the braid to kind of get in a bit deeper. Like so. Beautiful. So now that's done, we can go ahead and set up our mod cap. Positive will be facing me in this case towards the preamp tube. We'll go ahead and just kind of measure this out a little bit. Make our bends and be good to go. Beautiful. We got one down, 4 to go. So this one here is a bit unique because there should actually be a second bypass cap here. So there should be 2 of these. And then this resistor, which is a, what is that, 470 ohm. According to the schematic, this should be a 2.2K. So the owner wanted me to go ahead and add in the second bypass cap here and swap the 470 ohm with a 2.2K. He provided a, I believe it was a 1 watt carbon comp. I'll have to look to go in there. But for now, let's go ahead and remove this and clean out the eyelet just like we did for this one over here. So we've got this eyelet cleaned out, this eyelet cleaned out. We're about ready to install parts. But first, I just want to pull up the layout and show you guys kind of the discrepancy here and what we're rectifying, and then another issue I ran into. So the schematic calls for, or the layout calls for a 2.2K right here. In this area, this eyelet is that one and that one. So this spot right here should be a 2.2K. In the amplifier from the factory was a 470 ohm. So the owner wants me to replace that with a 2.2K. And then next to that, we will have a bypass cap. I crossed off in red because it wasn't present in the amp, but we'll be adding one. And then there's another bypass cap and then a 1.5K, which you can see right there. So the owner provided me with a 2.2K, but it is a 2 watt, which is a massive, massive resistor. You can see it's like the size of a bypass cap itself and quite a bit larger than the replacement bypass caps we've got here. So with that, I honestly don't think it's going to fit. Now we have to fit this here, 2 bypass caps and a resistor all in this little zone. Not only that, the lead is so thick on this that it basically takes up half the eyelet. And so up here, you'll notice we need to have 2 more connections in this eyelet. And this taking up half all by itself, there's no way we're going to fit all of this in here. So I'm going to set this aside. It's pretty late, so I can't really talk to the owner. But I think I'm going to go ahead and move forward with the carbon comp I have here. This is a 2.2K carbon comp, and we'll install this, and then I'll talk to him in the morning if he wants me to swap something else in there, or he wants to order a new, new old stock piece or something. That's totally fine, and I can easily swap that back over to something else. But for now, I think we're just going to go ahead and move forward with that replacement. All right, there we go. So we've got the 2 new bypass caps installed. We've got the 2.2K resistor installed or swapped in place of a 470 ohm. And we kept the 1.5K there. And yeah, looks like we're good to go. And get some of that last little bits of wax out of the way. And we can go ahead and move on to these 2. Now we're going to do this one and then we'll move on to this because this requires a second bypass cap that's missing. It's actually located over here. I don't know if you can see that on camera or not. But we'll go ahead and take care of this one first. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and stop there tonight. I can hear my baby screaming in the background. So I'm going to go help my wife out with that. But yep, we made good progress tonight. Replaced the pot, replaced 4 of the, what is it? We need to do 6 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 4 of the 6 bypass caps and 1 resistor. So, all right, we're going to end here and pick it up tomorrow. Back a new night, and the plan here is to obviously swap this with another one of the mod caps, but then we have this other cap way over here. I don't know if you can see that on screen or not. This is a very weird location for this cap and not how any of the official Fender layouts have it set. So we are going to be moving it right here alongside the resistor to go along with all of the rest. So once we have that done, we'll be finished with all of the bypass caps, and then we can go ahead and move on to the next thing. Just like before, we're just going to go ahead and heat up the eyelets, get some solder flowing there, and then we will lift up everything and clean out the wax. I think I'm going to go ahead and try if there's enough lead on the resistors to put them on the outside, just like I did here. So you have the caps on the inside just to make it look a bit more consistent. I'm not sure if there's enough lead on it from the factory, but we'll try. All right, that one done. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next one here. And again, I'm hoping there's going to be enough lead to be able to push this outside a bit more to fit the bypass cap, but we will see. Beautiful, that will work great. Now we can just add solder and then remove this cap because it's no longer needed now that we have this one here. And we're good to perfect. That looks great. So we've got the bypass caps all swapped in here. We've swapped one resistor. All the rest of the resistors measured in episode 1 of this series perfectly fine. So we are keeping them in, and they had long enough lead lengths to move them out of the way to be able to fit the bypass caps. So that worked out perfectly. So now let's just go ahead and remove this cap off of pin 3 and of this preamp tube, and then we're good to go. I'm just going to cut it because I can see the leads are wrapped right here in a loop, so that's going to be impossible to get off whole, and we're obviously not going to be reusing this anywhere, so we'll just cut that, make it easier. If I can grab it. It's a bit of an example of operation though, because so many flying leads here, and they're just so fragile, these ones that Fender used in this era. You look at them wrong and they will burn and melt. So not great wire for use in an amplifier like this, where there's lots of very tight soldering. But I'm sure it was cheap, which is why it was used. Fantastic. With that removed, we are done with that section of the work here. There's still, lots of little things to do, cleaning up all this wax that I was scraping off. We will vacuum, use compressed air, all the usual stuff. I'll grind off more of the wax where we see some leaky voltage, but that's just the nature of these boards. And like I said earlier, if you want it perfect, then that would require disassembling the entire board, removing the wax, and reassembling it piece by piece, which is a massive, time-consuming, ultimately expensive task, which we will not be doing in this case, but it's fine. It's just visually not as pretty, but as long as you clear it up in the right areas, you should be fine as far as leaky voltage is concerned. So from here, it's pretty late, 1 a.m., so I think we're going to end here and then either pick up in the next episode, or I will continue in this episode the next task, which probably be the bias circuit. I think we'll probably go with that next. All right. Well, this is last for this episode. Thanks so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy this kind of tech content. Let me know what you think, and until next time, see ya.